All right, welcome to your deep dive. Um, Today we're going to be looking at this book, Beatrice and Virgil,
Oh,
by
yeah.
Yann Martel.
Yes.
And this one, well, I guess I could just say I've been seeing a lot about it online.
It's been getting attention.
Yeah, and the attention it's getting, it seems like people either love it or absolutely hate it.
Oh, strong reactions, yeah.
So that's always intriguing when a book can do that.
That's right. It's always interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what we think.
Definitely, yeah. And to get like a full picture, we've got, of course, the book itself,
Of course.
but also we've got a bunch of excerpts from Goodreads reviews.
Mm.
And even a Chinese translation. I'm curious how that'll play into it.
Yeah.
Um, so before we jump into all of that, I guess it would be good to kind of get a sense of who this author is.
Okay.
You know, Yann Martel, I know he's written some other stuff, but this seems kind of different from what I'm used to seeing from him.
Well, he's best known for Life of Pi, which was this, huge worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
Won the Ban Booker Prize.
Right.
Was made into a movie that won, like, a bunch of Oscars.
Yeah.
I mean, just a massive success.
Yep.
And it's interesting because he lives in Saskatoon, Canada,
Oh, wow.
but writes in English,
Okay.
even though his first language is French.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting background he's got.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so coming off of Life of Pi then,
Yeah.
Beatrice and Virgil,
Right?
what is this thing about?
Yeah.
I saw some mentions of talking animals, which is not something I normally gravitate toward.
It is a little unusual.
Yeah.
But the setup is we've got this writer and he meets a taxidermist
Okay.
who's working on a play.
Right.
And the play is about a donkey and a howler monkey.
Okay, there's the talking animals.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the donkey's Beatrice and the monkey's Virgil.
Okay.
But it's not just like a cutesy, talking animal story.
Right.
The Holocaust is a central theme.
Oh, wow.
And Martel's approaching it through allegory.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So we've got like a story within a story. We've got
Hmm.
talking animals, and we've got the Holocaust.
That's right.
Like, how do those things even go together?
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of what people are reacting to.
Right, because you mentioned earlier those strong reactions. So
Yes.
what are people saying specifically?
Well, so I mean, it's really interesting. There's such a range. I mean, some people, they find it really deeply affecting, to the point of feeling like traumatized.
Oh, wow.
And they kind of accuse Martel of being like pretentious
Okay.
and exploitative,
Right.
like he's trying to manipulate them or something.
Wow, so strong negative reactions. But I thought you said there are people who like it too.
Oh, yes. There's another whole side that thinks it's brilliant
Okay.
and powerful.
So is it just that people are like misunderstanding it or something?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, some even call it a masterpiece.
Okay,
And
yeah.
they compare it to Beckett. Like,
Oh, wow.
it's really interesting to see
Yeah.
how people are processing it.
Okay, so you said pretentious was one of the words for the negative.
Yeah.
But what are some like details in the book that people are latching onto?
Well, so one thing that keeps coming up is that Martel, he has this self-referential style.
Okay.
So the main character in the book is a writer
Okay.
whose previous novel was this massive success.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of mirrors Martel's own experience with Life of Pi.
Oh, interesting.
So some people see it as this like clever layer of, metafiction,
Yeah.
while others find it really distracting.
Okay, so it's like, is he trying to make us question what's real and what's not real? What's he doing there?
Yeah, it's up in the air. I mean, I don't know. And then another element that's getting a lot of discussion is the symbolism.
Okay.
So, the donkey, Beatrice,
Mm-hmm.
she's often seen as representing like innocence
Right.
and resilience.
Okay.
And then the howler monkey, Virgil,
Yeah.
with his, these haunting screams, he
Mhm.
kind of embodies like the horrors of the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting, that imagery that
Yeah.
he's using.
That is powerful, and I'm not sure I'd want to read that.
Yeah, so several reviewers actually mentioned that those screams, like, they were really hard to read.
Right.
Like, they're very graphic.
Yeah.
Descriptions of animal suffering, particularly like Beatrice's torture,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty intense.
Okay.
And some people argue that it's gratuitous, like it's too much.
Yeah.
While others feel like it's necessary, like, to really get across that emotional reality
Mhm.
of the Holocaust.
So he's not shying away
No, not at all.
from making people uncomfortable. What about this taxidermist? You mentioned him earlier.
Oh, yeah, he's a really creepy character.
Okay.
I mean, reviewers, they use words like Nosferatu
Wow.
and Babadook. Like, he's menacing.
Okay.
He's obsessed with preserving dead animals. And some people even see him as, like, this representation of, like, the dark side of humanity.
Okay, so we've got the animals, we've got this creepy taxidermist, we've got the Holocaust in the background.
Right.
Like, what else should we know?
Well, there's this recurring motif of a striped shirt,
Okay.
which, you know, it clearly symbolizes the prison uniforms of the Holocaust.
Okay.
And then there's this final chapter, Games for Gustav.
Games for Gustav. Okay.
Which it presents all these, like, ethical dilemmas related to the Holocaust. And it really forces the reader to think about, like, some really difficult choices.
So he's not giving us any easy answers.
No easy answers.
He wants us to really grapple with this.
That's right.
Okay, so this is all circling back to, like, is this book even successful at doing what it's trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Is this a good way to explore the Holocaust?
Right.
Through allegory, or is it trivializing it?
Right.
Or even, you know, exploitative?
Yeah.
Like, it's a tough one.
And it sounds like there's no one right answer.
Yeah, it depends who you ask.
Okay.
But before we get into, like, those deeper interpretations, there's one more piece I think we really need to look at.
Okay.
Which is the fact that Martel includes all these excerpts from another book.
Okay.
From Flaubert's The Legend of St. Julian the Hospitaller.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
That's the question, right?
Yeah, I mean, that seems so random.
It does seem really out of place.
Yeah.
But there has to be some reason he's doing it.
Okay, well, now I'm really intrigued. So before we go down that rabbit hole, what is jumping out at you about this book so far?
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm really stuck on this Flaubert thing. Like, why include these excerpts from The Legend of St. Julian the Hospitaller?
Right.
In a book that's already got talking animals and the Holocaust. It just seems, I don't know.
It's a weird choice.
It's super weird.
But I think, you know, if we kind of dig a little deeper, maybe we can see how it connects.
Okay.
So Flaubert's story, it's about this guy Julian, and he's cursed to kill.
Okay.
And that kind of compulsion that he has, you know, even when he's trying to resist it.
Yeah.
It could be seen as kind of a metaphor for the Holocaust, for the things that were done.
Okay, yeah, like people being forced to do these horrific things.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm also thinking, like, both stories, they deal with this guilt.
Right.
And this atonement.
Right.
And also this relationship between humans and animals. Right, yeah, and in Flaubert's story, Julian, he eventually finds redemption, but by embracing, like, the lowest of creatures, the lepers.
Right.
And so in Beatrice and Virgil, it's like maybe the animals, especially Beatrice, you know, they represent the victims, the people who were, you know, dehumanized, stripped of their dignity.
Okay, so by bringing in Flaubert, it's like he's drawing these parallels
I think so.
between different kinds of suffering and saying, like, maybe there's this compassion, this understanding that can bridge even, like, the darkest divides.
Right. And it's interesting, too, because, you know, both stories also have these really powerful descriptions of animal cruelty.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. And some people just, they can't handle it.
Yeah.
They find it just unbearable.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the point. You know, maybe Martel's trying to shock us, like to shake us out of our complacency and force us to really see what's going on, to confront that reality.
Yeah. And it's not just like a physical reality,
right?
But it's also like how we respond to it emotionally.
Exactly.
Like, are we turning away from these uncomfortable truths, especially, you know, when it comes to history?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that brings us back to this whole central question: is this book actually a good way to engage with the Holocaust?
Right.
Or is it exploitative?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people, they really feel like by using these talking animals, he's trivializing it.
Yeah.
Like he's turning it into like this fable.
A fable, yeah.
But I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what if it's the opposite?
Okay.
What if, especially with the howler monkey, you know, those screams.
Yeah.
What if that's his way of of giving voice to something that's really unspeakable.
Okay.
Like those horrors that you can't even put into words.
Right.
You know, maybe that's what he's trying to do.
Okay, yeah, so it's not literally the victims,
Right.
but it's the trauma,
Yeah.
the pain.
Just the feeling that's just so hard to comprehend.
Right, and their voices are like these echoes
Yes.
of that trauma that are just like carrying through time.
Exactly.
And then there's this whole setting of the play
Right.
that the taxidermist is working on.
Yeah.
The shirt.
The shirt. Yeah.
Can we go back to that a little bit?
Sure.
Because I feel like we kind of glossed over it before.
Right. Yeah.
But it's important.
Yeah. I mean, so it's described as this vast empty space with a single tree.
Okay.
And it immediately makes me think of Waiting for Godot.
Oh.
That same kind of like existential emptiness.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the striped pattern of the shirt,
Right.
which, you know, obviously points to the uniforms.
Prison uniforms,
Yeah, from the concentration camps.
So it's like he's combining these two things, like the emptiness of Waiting for Godot with this historical context.
Exactly.
And that's part of what makes this book so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's all these layers.
It's so layered.
It's absurd. It's allegorical. It's historical.
Yeah, it's all woven together into this really complex tapestry.
And it's like you have to really pay attention
Yes.
to every little detail.
Yes, absolutely.
Because like even something small
Right.
could have this deeper meaning. Like I read a review that mentioned this 2-eyed needle
Oh, yeah.
in the taxidermist's sewing kit.
Right.
And they were saying, like, is that
It's so specific.
is that like a nod to the dehumanization?
Yeah.
Like the loss of individuality.
Right. You just become a number.
Yeah.
You're not a person anymore.
It's crazy how much thought
Yeah.
he put into every single thing.
It seems like it.
And speaking of details,
Yeah.
there's this really long description of a pear
Oh, yeah, the parrot.
that I kept seeing mentioned in these reviews.
Right.
And I'm curious, like, what do you make of that?
Well, so, I mean, it goes on for pages, right?
Yeah.
This super meticulous description of this pair.
Yeah.
And some people think it's a symbol of hope.
Right.
Like this beauty that still exists even in the face of, you know, all this suffering.
Yeah.
But I kind of think it might be more about the contrast.
Okay.
Like, here's this beautiful thing,
Yeah.
and it's right next to all this horror.
Right.
You know?
So it's like it's still there,
Yeah.
but we have to choose to see it,
Right.
to acknowledge it,
Yeah.
and then fight to protect it.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about the Games for Gustav chapter again,
Oh, yeah.
with those dilemmas.
Right. Those ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, it's like he's really trying to get us to think about our own morality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. He's presenting us with these like impossible choices.
Yeah.
And making us think about like what would we do
Yeah.
in this situation?
And these gray areas.
Yeah, the gray areas of the Holocaust. Like,
Right.
would you sacrifice one life to save another?
Right.
Would you tell your kid the truth,
Yeah.
even if it, you know, hurt them?
Yeah. And there are no easy answers.
Right. And that's the point, I think. It's not about like right or wrong.
Right.
It's about like the complexity of human experience.
Even in the most like extreme circumstances.
Yeah.
It's not heroes and villains.
Right.
It's just people trying to survive.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this book so thought-provoking.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not giving us easy answers.
Yeah.
It's challenging us
Yes.
to grapple with these difficult questions.
Yeah.
To think about our own biases and to really acknowledge like how powerful human resilience can be.
Yes.
Even in the face of something as horrible as the Holocaust.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, right? Because some people felt like Martel shouldn't have even written this book.
Yeah.
Like, who is he to be tackling the Holocaust?
Yeah, I saw that come up a lot in the reviews.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's not Jewish.
Right.
He didn't personally experience it.
Right. So it's like, what gives him the right?
Right, and it is a really valid question, you
Yeah.
know, like who has the authority to tell these stories, and
Yeah.
and can you do it respectfully if you're, you know, coming from the outside?
Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. But I did see one review that said, if history doesn't become a story, it dies to everyone but the historian. And it made me think, like, maybe it is important to keep having these conversations, even if they're difficult.
Right. And I think, Martel, he kind of addresses this in the book.
Okay.
He argues that fiction, it can offer a different kind of truth.
Yeah.
About trauma.
Right.
Like an emotional truth.
Okay.
That goes beyond just the facts.
So it's not about replacing those historical accounts.
Right.
But adding to them.
Yeah, adding another layer.
And helping us to connect with the human impact.
Yeah.
Like on this deeper level.
Exactly.
And maybe by using allegory, by using these talking animals, he's creating a space for people to engage with the Holocaust in a way that's less like, I don't know, a history lesson.
Right.
And more emotionally resonant.
Yeah.
Like you're not just reading facts, you're feeling something.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that people are going to approach this book really differently.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Based on their own background.
Right.
Like if you've studied the Holocaust versus if you're like encountering it for the first time through this.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to have a very different experience.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that's part of what makes literature so powerful.
Yeah.
It can create these conversations.
Yeah.
And there's no like one right way.
Right.
To understand it.
Right. It's not like math.
Right.
It's about what you take from it.
Exactly. What resonates with you.
Yeah.
What makes you think.
Yeah, what makes you feel. It's that personal connection.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the same for everyone.
That's right.
But what matters is that it's making us think.
Yes.
It's making us grapple with these tough questions.
Yeah.
And I think, even the negative reviews show that Martel's achieved something here.
Definitely. I think so.
Like whether you loved it or hated it, you had a reaction.
You did.
You're engaging with it.
Yeah, it's not something you can just ignore.
Right.
And that's got to mean something.
Yeah.
I
think we've covered so much.
We have.
But I hope you listening feel like you've got a better understanding of Beatrice and Virgil.
Yeah.
Of all the things it's bringing up.
Right. All the complexities.
Yes.
It's a complex book.
It is.
Yeah.
But before we go, I do want to say one more thing.
Okay.
We were talking about the Holocaust kind of in these abstract terms.
Yeah.
But it's really important to remember that behind the history, there are people.
Yes.
There are millions of individual stories.
That's so important.
Yeah, and so for anyone who's intrigued by Beatrice and Virgil and the questions it raises, I encourage you to seek out those stories as well.
Yes.
To hear those voices, to learn about those experiences.
Right.
And to honor those memories.
Yeah, to keep those stories alive.
Yeah, and that's how we really connect with history.
That's how it becomes real.
Yeah, on that personal level.
Yes.
And I think it's a good place to end.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been great.
And until next time, happy reading.